It's Thanksgiving, 1998. The 10-1 Minnesota Vikings are slated to take on the 8-3 Dallas Cowboys with the entire football world watching. This isn't just your normal Cowboys home game on Thanksgiving, though. This is stop one on the Randy Moss Vengeance Tour.
We should play it.
Well, there's no instructions.
It's Dallas. The game, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
Moss is going into this game to prove a few things. He's going against a top 10 defense, and obviously for a young receiver to prove you can do well against a team like that would be great. But he's also out for revenge. Why? Well, we have to go back to the 1998 NFL Draft. Randy Moss was undoubtedly one of the best players available on draft day. He was a Heisman finalist, proved he could win during the FCS National Championship run in his freshman year, and he ran an estimated 4.25 second 40-yard dash. But some off-field issues eclipsed all of this, and Moss found himself sinking on draft boards across the league. One scout room that still showed interest? The Dallas Cowboys, who happened to have the 8th overall pick in the draft. Moss was led to believe that his childhood favorite team was going to pick him, especially after a really strong draft interview. And when they eventually sent a scout to watch the draft in the same city he was in, well, it just felt like destiny. But somewhere along the line, things took a turn. Jerry Jones, who had dealt with Michael Irvin's off-field issues, didn't want any more stress, so he, acting as owner and GM of the Cowboys, decided to pick eventual Pro Bowl pass rusher Greg Ellis instead. And that let Moss fall. Moss continued to slip in the draft after the Cowboys pick, and even fell below fellow receiver Kevin Dyson. The Minnesota Vikings, who had pick 21, knew what kind of value was available, so they went with Moss. Now that Moss was officially on a team, and coincidentally one that played against the Cowboys his rookie year, he had the perfect chance to prove everyone wrong in the NFL, specifically Jerry Jones, both on and off the field. He did.
But that's not fair.
Well, that's Dallas.
Dallas, indeed.
Guys, it's my turn.
By the time Moss met up against the Cowboys, he was no longer a potential star because he was just a star. Moss, along with Chris Carter and Randall Cunningham, headlined a Vikings offense that appeared to be early Super Bowl favorites. They were a high-scoring team with two great receivers, and the defense certainly did a good job as well, giving up the 6th least points in football. By the end of the season, Moss and Carter would combine for over 2,300 yards and 29 touchdowns, with notably Moss leading the league with 17 scores. The offense was very hard to stop since you really had to pick and choose who you wanted to shut down, and if you chose wrong, then they were going to score a touchdown. This matchup drew interest though, since on paper, the Cowboys might have been the perfect team to shut down the Vikings. They were one of just 5 defenses that gave up less points than Minnesota and had 3 Pro Bowlers on defense with defensive tackle Leon Lett and defensive backs Darren Woodson and Deion Sanders. Going into the game, Deion Sanders versus Randy Moss had the makings of one of the greatest matchups in football history. Both of them were very fast. Moss drew comparisons to Deion while just a high schooler, and most of all, they were both electric to watch on the football field. This was what a nationally televised game was supposed to be. One might even call it worthy of primetime television. Deion Sanders entered Texas Stadium in a walking boot and never touched the field. Moss thrived in his absence. Without a player on the field that could really keep up with him both in regards to speed and football sense, he was able to torch the Cowboys defense. On Moss's first reception, Kevin Smith bit too hard on a well-designed but even better sold flea flicker, and by the time he realized what happened, Moss was well behind him where Cunningham hit him for the easy score. The Cowboys began to recognize Moss's abilities on the football field, finally, and try to layer double coverage the next time Cunningham targeted him deep. He still got open enough to get the ball, so the Cowboys tried a new tactic: pass interference. That didn't work either, since when the referee threw the flag, Moss was just about to enter the end zone. That second catch put Moss at 2 touchdowns and well over 100 yards. By any means a good game for a receiver, but Moss wasn't done yet. Late in the third quarter, Randall Cunningham hit him for this beautiful screen pass.
Minnesota, the clock ticking down to in the third quarter. They lead by 10. The Cowboys showing blitz. Minnesota picks Randy Moss, breaks a tackle, and Randy Moss races down the sideline, and Randy Moss just outruns everybody into the end zone. He is incredible. I think he might be.
Moss ended the game with 3 receptions and 163 yards and put 18 points on the board. The Vikings won by 10, so it's safe to say that Moss got his revenge, and pretty much single-handedly buried the Cowboys.
And that is Dallas.
That game was probably enough to make people in Dallas question Jones's decision, but Moss went on to play Dallas 8 times in his career where he went undefeated. Over the course of these wins, Moss caught 40 balls for almost 800 yards and scored 11 times. Some of these wins were pretty big too. In the 1999 playoffs, Moss met the Cowboys in the wildcard round, where we finally got to see him take on Deion Sanders. Sanders muffed a punt, Moss scored a long bomb touchdown, and the Vikings sent the Cowboys home with Moss totaling 127 yards. It's safe to say that somewhere deep down, Jerry Jones regrets passing on Moss. All of the Cowboys' attempts at adding a receiver since the 1998 draft have been pretty rough, and when you consider Michael Irvin had a career-ending injury during the 1999 season, there's even more salt in the wound. It wasn't until Terrell Owens arrived in 2006 that the team would have another true number one option, and even though T.O. was a star, the team continued to strike out at the position when they went all in on Roy Williams, who never ended up getting back to his 2006 level of production when he was in a Cowboys uniform. I think we all know how Moss's career ended. He went on to break the single-season receiving record with the Patriots and came within just 4 points of winning the Super Bowl twice. And while obviously he would have liked to win, that's certainly closer than Jerry Jones and the Cowboys have gotten. It's time for the Randy Moss Fun Fact Lightning Round. Randy Moss attended high school with Jason White Chocolate Williams in West Virginia, where they played basketball together. Moss was very good, and he was an All-American, but decided to pursue football instead after at an All-American camp. He got blocked too hard by fellow Minneapolis sports and Boston sports legend Kevin Garnett. In 2008, he bought a NASCAR truck. He's one of the only players to throw and catch an interception in the NFL. Lastly, he has a higher career passer rating than NFL legend Joe Montana.
How do you pay, man? If you don't write checks, how do you pay these guys?
Straight cash, homie.